Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. You're listening to PHLY Flyers Postgame, brought to you by Mortgage CS. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Long time no see, everybody. It's been about, 15, 20 minutes since we last spoke, and I'm still... I don't know, JP. I'm still kind of like, I have no idea what happened in that game. I'm going to be totally honest with everyone. I know that the final score was 4-1. It looked like some rough stuff was going on.
There was hockey played.
Yeah, there was some hockey. They played 3 periods, as is typically the case. Beyond that, I can't really tell you because the story tonight has been Cutter Gauthier. If you somehow have missed it, we just did an emergency pod about half an hour ago.
Check that out, guys.
But yeah, check that out. It's right here on the YouTube page. I'm pretty sure it got podcasted as well. 2022 5th overall pick, Cutter Gauthier, sent to Anaheim in exchange for Jamie Drysdale, right-handed defenseman. He was the 6th overall pick in 2020. Flyers also receive a second-round pick in next year's draft, the 2025 draft. So getting some assets there. I'll tell you, man, this is really throwing me for a loop. You did a great job setting this thing up. We did the emergency pod, so you weren't really able to chime in while Charlie and I were live. But just, JP, what was your initial reaction when this broke shortly after puck drop?
Well, I mean, listen, Bill, we're Philly sports fans, right? So we've been through this before as a Philly sports fan. So this one is just like another one of those, like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, how does this happen? Like, just to paint this picture, this was one of our top prospects, top 3 prospects in our pool. It was killing at BC, had a great tournament with the Team USA at the World Juniors, and then all of a sudden he gets traded in the middle of a Pittsburgh game.
That was the timing of it. It all, like,
so weird.
As we're learning the time frame of events, it's starting to make more and more sense. We knew that Jonesy and Danny B had gone to Sweden for the World Juniors.
Right.
And like I said with Charlie, they had a couple of guys there, but I mean, Cutter Gauthier is the reason they're in Sweden. And as it turns out, more than we even knew, not only is he the top prospect they have there, one of the 2 top prospects in the organization, but he really hadn't been communicating with them basically at all since he told them around the World Championships last year, beginning of last summer, I guess, around the Stanley Cup playoffs, same time, that he didn't really care to be a Philadelphia Flyer, and he hadn't really been in communication with the organization at all. They tell us after he said that, because he's, a freshman in college, basically. He just finished his freshman year of college. He had gone to the World Juniors, that prior, December, January. Then he goes and plays in the World Championships. This teenager is probably tired and his head is swimming. So we're going to give him some space. We're not going to make this a big deal. They quietly shopped him, as Charlie told us at the draft. They offered him the Montreal for the 5th pick, but they just kind of thought if we can talk to him, maybe we can change his mind. They attempted to do that in Sweden, and he did not meet with them. Man, that is... it's just not great for there's a lot of fans right now that I'm commiserating with, because this just shows like how tough this needle of a rebuild is to thread.
Oh yeah.
Like, people are nervous that this is going to be a bigger trend. Like, the things that people, because we've kind of, I don't know, contributing to like the rebuild of John Tortorella's like perception. I wouldn't say that, but I do think he has maybe not softened, but he's earned a bad reputation over the years that when you really look at it, it's like, Actually, a ton of players really like this guy.
Yeah.
A ton don't, though.
Yep.
And something I was just looking up, and I want to bring this up with Charlie when he joins us, JP. Looked up a list of NCAA players who have refused to sign with the team that drafted them. Typically, it's guys who believe maybe they were underdrafted. Adam Fox, Alex Kerfoot, Jimmy Vesey, guys who go in the later rounds, and it's like, what do I owe this? They picked my name out of a hat, basically. Like, I'm a third-round pick. I'm some guy to them. And they ultimately just want to choose their destination. Like, Adam Fox famously was just like, I ain't playing here. Like, he was in Calgary, then he was in Carolina, and he just kept making it known, like, I want to be a Ranger. Eventually just ended up signing with the Rangers, or was traded eventually to the Rangers for, like, nothing. But it happens. One first-round pick I could find who was refused to sign. Kevin Hayes.
Oh.
Kevin Hayes, of course, went to BC.
These puzzle pieces are connected now.
Kevin Hayes, of course, went to Boston College, was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks in the first round. Now, a lot of people think he was overdrafted, was more of like a mid-second round pick maybe, but surprisingly was taken early, and he was just like, nah, and he eventually ended up with the Rangers, shockingly. But these puzzle pieces are all starting to come together. Do I think like a game of golf with Kevin Hayes, probably putting a couple away?
Dude, you never know.
Like, do I think that ultimately made up this kid's mind? No, but it's a puzzle piece. Like, what you were showing me that interview where he talked about golfing.
That podcast.
With Kevin Hayes. And man, do you think this is the beginning of a bigger issue for this team?
I don't think so. I think this is just the situation that Cutter just maybe talking to Kevin Hayes, looking at the situation, looking at the Flyers play as well, maybe he's thinking, like, that's not maybe the conducive play style that I want to play. Because, dude, look how he likes to play. He's a little showboat out there a little bit. So maybe he just looked at it at a bigger scheme and just didn't think it was the right fit for him. But the concerning part of what you're mentioning is the fact that he wasn't keeping up with communication with the Flyers. That's the more concerning part. That's immaturity. And that is something, listen, I get it. We were all mature at 19 years old. We were all doing. Bill was over here not paying his electric bill. So we've all done dumb stuff at 19.
It got paid sometimes. It's like 75% of the time it got paid.
But that is like extremely concerning because you need to have open communication. This team draft, this team essentially own the rights to you. So you need to have that open dialogue. The fact that it didn't happen, the fact that the Flyers were even talking about trading him at the draft time this past year, it is extremely telling. And unfortunately, again, you look at it as a Philly sports fan because, like, you know me, I'm looking at this rebuild and I'm obviously going to compare it to the Sixers one. And, like, this brings me similar thoughts of, like, when I found out the Markelle Fultz injury. I was like, oh, no.
I think that's the most concerning thing is, like, a rebuild is really hard because I point to things.
Seriously,
I point to things like the Buffalo Sabres all the time.
Oh, yeah.
10 consecutive top 10 picks, including 2 1s and 2 2s.
Yeah.
They're terrible. They're not good. Like, it's been a long time for them, and they haven't made the playoffs since Mike Richards knocked them out in 2011. Like, it's been a long, long time for that team, and they're still like not that much further along than they were 5 years ago. This is a hard thing to do, and it is giving me those, man, all the things that might go wrong can. Vibes that the Sixers did. Like, with the Sixers, it was injuries, taking the wrong guys, all those sorts of things. Now, I'm still confident Matvei Michkov is going to come over.
For sure.
But it just makes that wait a little longer. Like, Gauthier was going to be, at the very least, a nice, like, I expected him to join this team in late April maybe, or in, like, mid-April when his college season ended. It was at least going to be, all right, our stud is in here. But this dude who we've been watching tear it up, you know, at juniors, world championships, world juniors and world championships in the NCAA, he's here and he's going to be scoring some goals for us. And at least we'll have that to get us through until some other guys start to show up. That has been taken away from us now.
You had some more realistic expectations. I'm looking at Michkov and Gauthier as my Taze and Kane. That's how I was looking at it. And you're right, Bill. Like, any little one of these situations can happen. Injuries happen. Players not wanting to play here. That's why it's so important to build a culture that Torts is doing right now. Because, listen, if it's not Gauthier, it's going to be another player. and the Flyers have to be prepared with that culture, and that's what they're doing right now.
And I see a lot of comments like, what if he just didn't want to play for John Tortorella?
That's
and
like, what do you think it is? Why do you want to play here?
That's a definite, I guess, possibility. I just think like in hockey, especially, like, I mean, in all pro sports, coaches are Andy Reid, Bill Belichick. These things are 1 in a million. It feel like, you know how many coaches get hired and fired during the 10 years of these guys? Like John Tortorella, we're already hearing rumors that he might not be the coach next year. Now, he'll still be, like, the rumor is, like, they'll bring in Berube, and then Tortorella will move to a different role in the front office. And so I guess you're still kind of playing for John Tortorella.
Right.
And I can't imagine Craig Berube's, like, the easiest dude in the world to play for. But nor are 90% of NHL coaches, and the ones who are easy to play for, like DJ Smith, are pushovers, and their teams with high expectations suck. So, like, if you're making the decision about the first, I mean, we're talking about 7 years of a guy's NHL career before he can actually become like an unrestricted free agent. If you're making that decision based on the current head coach of a team, that's asinine. Like, he's not going to be your coach that long. You're not going to have to deal with him. John Tortorella doesn't last that long anywhere. And I can't imagine that's the reason or like the top reason. But I'm very interested to see what happens now with I'm very interested to see what happens now with Gauthier, and if he has a destination in mind where he's just
it's
like,
not over, you're
I
saying.
want to go to this specific place, or he was just like, nah, fuck Philly. Like, because you just look at the situations, and yes, John Tortorella is hard to play for. He's not for everybody, and that's where I'm ultimately landing here. If you don't want to be here, I don't want you. But just the situation of like where he fits in, because I think that played a big part in Kevin Hayes' decision. Because it's like, all right, well, I ain't playing the first line. I'm probably not playing this. Like, where do I fit? In Philly, they need exactly, whether Gauthier is a winger or a center, they need exactly what he is.
Right.
I look at where he was just traded to now, Anaheim. I'm like,
It's a lot of young talent, dude.
Trevor Zegras.
Yep.
Like, they have all these guys, Mason McTavish, Troy Terry.
Practice, man.
Like, they have all these really good young players who are ahead of him in their like, he's going to be a third line player for them. And that, like, yes, he's ultimately going to probably be at the very least an excellent goal scorer in this league.
For
I don't
sure.
know about superstar, but it really looks like he's going to produce some offense at this level.
Yeah, it looks like it.
If that's the case, like, he's going to get paid, but like, I don't know, if you're on the second power play unit, if you're only getting third line minutes, like, your first couple of contracts, you ain't going to make that much. He's going to make a ton here just because, like, who else is doing it? Someone has to score goals. Even if he's not that good, he's going to score a bunch of goals because he's going to be on the top line. So I'm interested to see how his situation plays out there. If he joins the Ducks at the end of the regular season, what all plays out here. But just, I'll tell you, something... This is interesting to me. Al Morgani, and you pointed this out to me as I was getting ready for the emergency we did. I'm just throwing my hands up, like not really listening to anything, just getting ready to go live. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. We'll see.
Right.
Al Morgani said at one of the intermission reports that Cutter has been mad basically since he was sent back to college. He wanted to be one and done at Boston College. And I remember hearing that, like, when he was drafted, he was like, yeah, I want to do, you know, like my freshman year, go to college, and then I want to go pro. Allegedly, Danny B is the one who kind of spearheaded the effort to be like, why don't you go back? Why don't you do another year in college and then join us after this season? He was unhappy about that. And that starts to make the timeline of all this make sense, because Danny says that when they drafted him, he said, I was built to be a Flyer, wanted to be here. A year goes by, then he goes to World Championships. He had 7 goals in 10 games at World Championships. And that is, listen, tearing it up at World Juniors, tearing it up in the NCAA, that's one thing. There is a ton of pro and NHL level talent at the World Championships.
Yeah.
He had 7 goals in 10 games. He clearly believed himself ready and, like, kind of proved it. If he's mad about that, that's something. And while this could just be speculation, I do want to, like, the source of this information, Al Morganti.
That's Al.
He's got serious connections to college hockey in Boston, obviously BC. Like, he basically banged down the door to get Johnny Gaudreau in there. BU didn't want it. Like, that whole thing. He's got connections up there. He's from Boston, and he's got. I would not brush off this report that this is the thing maybe that was the cause of his frustration, more so than anything to do with like Tortorella or the direction of the franchise or anything like that. Simply the decision to tell him, we want you to go back another year of college.
But then, like, the counter argument is like, okay, so Danny Briere tells you that, but dude, Cutter had a great year in college this past year. So if anything, Danny may have helped you. So like, I look at this and like, Bill, like, is this kind of like the generational issue where Cutter didn't like the situation that was happening? It wasn't going in his favor. So he's like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to let it play out. I'm going to kill it at BC. I'm going to kill it at Team USA. And I'll find my own path because, as we're seeing now in every sport, not just in hockey, but especially more in basketball, players are taking more of that control, right? So maybe Cutter is trying to take control here because he got a little upset. And if that's the case, that adds back to it. Dude, why are you being immature? Come on, you're a professional hockey player here. Shouts to JR with the super chat as well, man.
Yeah, it's I do think there might be just something to that, because when I hear he wouldn't even sit down, like
That's
he and his
ridiculous,
family
dude.
refused to meet with Danny and Jonesy, and Patrick Sharp was there as well. That's immaturity. Like, I don't care. If you're not going to sign here, don't sign here. If you don't want to be here, fine.
But what are the parents,
But you're just not going to talk to them? You're going to be like, nah?
But Bill, if that was you, what would your parents have said to you?
Oh, they would have. It would have. Listen, yes, absolutely.
Dude, no, you got to sit down and
talk to
Yeah,
them.
you got to talk to
You
them.
at least have to talk to them. But if maybe he's just like, my mind is made up and I don't want to have to worry about this anymore. Like, if they were, as much as they say, like, okay, we were just going to give him his space and see if he changed his mind. If they're shopping him all the way back in, June at the draft?
Right.
They think his mind was pretty well made up. Like, you didn't draft a guy 5th overall to then try to trade him the next draft. Like, a year later. And listen, it seems like I'm just looking at some of these trades that have been made and some of the guys that have been moved because they basically refused to go anywhere. And it's like, yeah, Adam Fox got a 2nd-round pick back, and Kevin Hayes wasn't even traded. He just never signed and then ended up with the Rangers.
Right.
Like, at least they were able to get Jamie Drysdale and a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty decent return. We will see what Jamie Drysdale is. Based on everything I've heard about the kid, I've seen him a little, but like, I don't watch a ton of Ducks games. Going to be straight up with you.
You're not staying up that late?
It's just like the Ducks are terrible. He can quarterback a power play, which is something this team badly needs.
Yep.
He's playing over, granted, he's only played 10 games this year, but he's playing over 21 minutes a game for them. They're using him as a top-end guy. He's got 5 points in the 10 games, despite the injuries he's played with. We're going to talk to Charlie a little later about the injury history and why the Flyers think it's kind of behind him right now. Obviously, this organization, with the history of injuries that they are, I'm optimistic that he's fine. Like, no, I'm not. It's kind of horrifying that they traded for a guy who missed all but 8 games last year and has only played in 10 games so far this year. But if you go back 2 seasons, as a 19-year-old, he had 32, 35 points in 81 games. Like, that's pretty damn good. It's durable, and it's pretty good production, especially for a teenage defenseman. So I think they did pretty well with the return. I'm looking forward to seeing Jamie Drysdale, but this is a disappointment, to say the least.
But Bill, let's look at a positive here. And the positive to me is the way this organization handled the situation. It was all under wraps. Like, none of us heard anything of it. And then the moment where they had to strike, they struck, and that was today. And they got back a prospect that can help us here now and in the future, like you mentioned. And they get a draft pick for next year. So, we talk about Danny Briere and all these moves he's made since taking over. The man has been straight up cooking, guys. And I think right now, this is a situation that you don't want to ever deal with, right? You don't ever want to have to deal with one of your top prospects asking or saying he probably doesn't want to play for you, right? But the Flyers they moved quickly and they got the job done. And I'm happy for this return considering the situation. It's unorthodox.
I would have loved to see Cutter Gauthier in orange and black.
For sure.
But you can't. I'm not risking the waiting out and then you just can't move him and he just moves on and you get nothing for him. Not risking that.
You're not there morning.
Honestly,
this one.
if you don't want to be here,
that's the
I
most
don't want you
important part.
here.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's going to come down to. We've seen it all along. Even if you're a good player, Kevin Hayes is a good player. Ivan Provorov, maybe overrated, maybe overused, but he's a good player. Tony DeAngelo has a role, not a great player, overpaid, but has a role, is good. But the team is better without these guys because they didn't want to be here. The same goes for Cutter. You know what? You're having an awesome college career, great at World Juniors, all this stuff. You haven't done shit in this league. You don't get to dictate to the Flyers. Like, we're going to move on from you. See you later if you don't want to be a part of this. It's all about who buys in. It's all about who wants to be here. The culture, yes, the most important thing is having good players. Mm-hmm. You have to have really good players and a bunch of them if you're going to win. But I always look at Tampa. I look at them as an example. Like, I see someone get hit with someone takes a dirty hit on the ice for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Nikita Kucherov, probably the MVP right now this year. His gloves are off and he's swinging before the dude hits the ice.
On the spot.
Like, it has to be a 100% buy-in, even from your top-end guys. And if you weren't going to get that from Cutter, as much as this hurts, better now than later, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I think back to when they absolutely had to trade Eric Lindros. Yeah, Kim Janssen's a nice player. You should probably get a little bit more for a dude, like one of the best players in your franchise's history than like him and a couple of throw-in dudes, you know? It's better now than when everyone knows you have to trade him.
It's funny you mentioned Lindros. Now, we don't know what Cutter's going to be, right? We don't know what his career's going to be, but isn't it ironic that Lindros wanted out of Quebec? And he decided to come, and we wound up getting him. And now, many, many years later, Cutter doesn't want to play here, and we got to part ways with him.
It's just very interesting. Listen, got to take a quick second to tell you about Bagels & Company. As you all know, Bagels & Co. was our presenting sponsor at the Reading Terminal Show, which was a great, great time. If you want the best Brooklyn-style bagels made right here with Philly love, you have to go to Bagels & Company. They have huge bagels, the biggest bagels in Philly, very large, hence the Brooklyn/New Jersey style, and a huge variety of bagels. Usually have 15 to 20 different types to choose from daily, and seasonal bagels as well. For instance, the Christmas flavored bagel on display for the Christmas season. That is the one that you all saw me eat live on the show. It was untoasted, uncream cheesed, and it was delicious. But most of you out there, you want a topping on your bagel. Well, guess what? Bagels & Company has you covered. Largest cream cheese variety, over 30 different flavors of cream cheeses and schmears, catered to various sporting events, Philly-themed things. Maybe you want to have a little Flyers watch party. Listen, there's only going to be one Eagles playoff game probably. So you want those Green Birds bagels. Hit up Bagels & Co. for their Brooklyn style bagels. And I think most importantly, they are affordable. You get a lot of food for cheap, and who doesn't love that? So please do me a favor. For the best Brooklyn-style bagels made right here in Philly, head to thebagelsandco.com/store-locator to find the closest Bagels & Co. near you. That's thebagelsandco.com/store-locator. Go to Bagels & Co. You could do a lot worse.
And
I don't know
bagels, not bagels.
I don't even know if I say it right or wrong, to be quite honest with you. I'm looking ahead now. I want to ask Charlie about where he sees this all going. The Flyers right now have 7 defensemen. Mark Stahl does typically not play, but there could be some more on the move soon. I want to see if he thinks this is going to accelerate the, maybe not need, but desire to trade maybe Sean Walker, right-handed defenseman. Maybe just Sean Walker does have experience on the left side. Maybe it could be Nick Seeler, potentially both. So we'll see about that when he gets here. But just looking at the Flyers' assets right now, they have a pair of firsts this year. They have the first next year, then either 2 seconds this year and 2 next year, or 1 second this year and 3 next year, depending on what Columbus decides to do with their second-round pick. They don't have to make the decision until after the first round this year, whether they're going to give the Flyers a second now or later. My guess is they give it to them later because Columbus is terrible, so it's going to be like the 34th overall pick probably. But we'll see how that all works out. But this gets back to just the success of this trade, I guess. It's still like, man, you lost one of your blue chip guys. You did get a pretty good 21-year-old defenseman, and as we've seen with this coaching staff, look at the step Travis Sanheim has taken. Look at what Sean Walker's doing. Look at what Nick Sealer's doing. Cam York. Shit, Igor Zamula on the power play is all of a sudden like a thing.
He had an assist
on the power play tonight. He's been not that bad. If he's pretty good and has first pair upside, you have to believe this coaching staff can get it out of him. And with all the assets that they now have accumulated, this might not be the major loss we think it is, even though it feels like a major loss right now.
I think why people are upset a little bit, Bill, is because I think that fans feel that now the rebuild took a step back because we got rid of a key piece of this rebuild.
Yes, absolutely.
But keep in mind, the culture that we are building here, and then the assets that you just mentioned as well, Bill, like this team could still put together a championship caliber team that everyone wants. Matvei Michkov is still waiting around the corner as well. Hopefully he can come here on time too. But the culture that's being built with the assets here, I truly feel like the rebuild's right on track. I do fully believe that we're going to be fine. We have to find the next Cutter Gauthier. That's just life. Everyone is trying to find those key pieces. So keep this train moving. Keep this train moving. That's all. That's all what I would say.
Do we have Charlie? He's in the link from the. I should just text you this, but I like to produce on the fly. He says he's in the link from the emergency pod. I don't know if you can reuse those. He has to go to the new one. Do we have a... Okay, cool. All right.
Get Charlie on, guys.
All right, so we will have Charlie O'Connor in just a moment. Until then, let me tell you about Game Time, baby. You know that I am a big fan of the Game Time app because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Game Time is the place for last-minute tickets. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Listen, it's time of year. You might want to start going to some events. I'm eyeing up a ton of wrestling shows coming up over the next couple of months. I'm going to be using Game Time for everything I can because there's going to be a lot of different venues in use around the city for WrestleMania week, all that stuff. You don't always know what the sight lines are going to be. You don't always know exactly where you're going to be sitting.
It's useful.
Great thing about Game Time, viewer app. You can just, boom, click, see where the seats are, see exactly what your sight lines are. You're not going to hopefully have a stanchion or something right in front of you that you weren't counting on. It's huge. Something like that for what's about to happen over the next couple of weeks and months in Philly. Absolutely recommend the Game Time app. So make sure you use code PHLY and get that discount while you're at it. I guess we need to talk a little about the game, but I'm more just thinking about, like...
It did feel like the Flyers also were paying attention to this news, too, because the way they were playing tonight.
I wonder if that, like, weighed in at all. Maybe we can ask Charlie about that when he does join us.
Good question, yeah.
But, like, I wonder if they knew, because Danny Briere said, like, when they brought up the medical, it's like, well, we've been exchanging that information with the Ducks over the last couple of days, so, like... Maybe news broke in the locker room earlier. Maybe the guys have no interest whatsoever because, it's some teenager who ain't here yet, and this is a team trying to make the playoffs. Like, none of them know who Cutter Gauthier. Like, maybe they've met him at, like, a camp or something, but it's not like he's one of the guys at this point. So I do wonder if that, like, weighed in at all because I just think this is kind of a weird game.
Especially after Saturday. Like Saturday was
Yeah.
such an emotional game. It played so well, so physical, and that a lot of that lacked here tonight.
That's like the 5 penalties in the first period, I
Right.
guess kind of just put this game in a very, very weird place.
Got a power play goal. Celebrate that.
Yeah, like they did score a power play goal. Owen Tippett gets his 13th of the year. That's big. We're starting to see Igor Zamula really take ownership of this role as the power play quarterback. That's something, I guess, when Drysdale gets here, that's one of the first things we're going to look at. 13, I think, of his 35 career assists are on the power play. All the elite prospects, notes about him and everything are like, oh, he's a power play quarterback. He can absolutely do that. So we're going to ask Charlie O'Connor about that and some more stuff now that we have Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter joining us live from the scene of the crime, the Wells Fargo Center. It is Charlie O'Connor. Charlie, first and foremost, did you pay attention to this game at all? Because I sure as hell didn't. Like, do you have any notes on the game itself?
Very few. I'm planning tomorrow to go back and actually watch the game.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. We have the day off tomorrow, at least, in terms of show schedule. So I'll be able to go back and actually see what the hell happened here. But I guess we have to start with how bad it is to be dealing with birds right now, whether it's the Penguins, the Ducks, or the Eagles. Birds are just horrible in Philadelphia. No. And the BC Eagles, right? Yeah, the Boston College. Fuck birds, man. Fuck birds. I think that should be the subtitle of today's episode. No, but I guess since we last spoke, like an hour ago, I've been trying to put together the pieces of this Cutter Gauthier puzzle. And we were told that this all kind of started at or around or right after the World Championships last year, where he said he did not want to be a Flyer. Now, if you remember the World Championships, he scored 7 goals in 10 games. That is a tremendous number. He just had 2 in 7 at the World Juniors. But at the World Championships, there's a lot of pro and NHL level talent. He's up against them. He's beating them 7 goals. Do you think maybe his showing there and then the team telling him you're not ready, like those two things kind of led to this?
Look, it's possible. And Briere basically said, look, I'd love to give you an answer as to why, but we don't know because he went radio silent on them. Sure, it's certainly possible that Gauthier wanted the Flyers after his freshman year to basically come to him and beg him to turn pro immediately. That's possible. The Kevin Hayes rumor, as you talked about a few hours ago when we broke this down originally, like that's possible. That could have soured him on the Flyers a bit. It could be a few things. Who really knows? But yeah, it's legitimate. I think Al Morganti on the intermission show for NBC Sports Philly, he theorized that it could have been something to do with the fact that Gauthier wanted to turn pro last summer. Who knows? Honestly, it's one of those things where you can't, and my guess is at some point it'll come out as to why. Gauthier at some point is going to give an interview probably with people in Anaheim, and maybe he'll say, maybe he won't. Maybe it'll get reported later. Someone who's close to him will give the full story. But look, I wanted to see Cutter Gauthier play for the Philadelphia Flyers. I was excited about his upside. I do, however, have the belief that, hey, players should have the right. College players, this is part of the process. If they really, really don't want to play somewhere, they have the right to wait 4 years. And the reason why I didn't think it was ever going to become a thing was because I never thought Cutter Gauthier would actually play 4 years of college rather than snuff the Flyers. But the way the Flyers looked at it is, we're not going to take that risk, and we think we can get a legitimate top-pair defenseman in Jamie Drysdale and mold him into a guy that can be, a core member, not just a good player, but a really good player. So they went for it, and I guess that's really all you can say.
Yeah, I was just saying to JP, like, the rumors and stuff, until we, hear, oh, yeah, I didn't want to play for John Tortorella, I'm not going to take a lot of the rumors seriously about why or why not. But Al Morganti is, 1, a Hockey Hall of Fame broadcaster and journalist, and 2, a man with unending connections to New England, Boston, and the college hockey scene up there. He might have a little bit more information than pretty much anyone else simply because of the people he knows and what has gone on up there. But it is interesting just to bring up Kevin Hayes real quick. I was looking up a list during the third period of NCAA guys who didn't sign. And there's a few, like Adam Fox, I think is the most famous because he was like, good luck, I'm only going to the Rangers. Kerfoot, Jimmy Vesey also didn't sign with the teams that drafted them. You know who the only first-round pick I could find is? Kevin Hayes.
Kevin Hayes.
Yeah. Just an interesting thing. Just an interesting thing based on an article I read from November 2021. But now I guess it's... You know, we're on to Cincinnati or whatever the Bill Belichick quote is. We are on to Jamie Drysdale. 5 points in 10 games this year. He had 32 points in 81 games as a 19-year-old in 2021-22. Pretty good offensive numbers. Everything I've read about him, like elite prospect scouting reports and stuff, are like, hey, he's a power play quarterback, if nothing else. Like, he's going to drive play. He's going to move the puck. What do we know about Jamie Drysdale? Where do you think he fits right now on this blue line?
Well, I mean, and I've talked to a few people about this since the trade. My knowledge of Jamie Drysdale basically ends when he got drafted, because I remember researching him before the draft and really liking his skill set and being like, hey, this is an exciting guy. This is a guy who, you know, the Flyers are not going to get him, but if they had any chance of getting him, I would be excited if they got Jamie Drysdale because, you know, obviously he's got the right-handed shot thing going for him, but it's well beyond that. You know, this is a guy who's a really good skater, you know, who has a lot of talent. And I remember going into that draft, I thought he was like the best chance of turning into a legitimate number one defenseman for a team. So thinking back to my last thoughts of Jamie Drysdale, they're pretty positive. However, I haven't watched him at all nor paid close attention to him for the last 3 years. I know that during that year, when he played 81 games and had actually a lot of minutes on a really bad Anaheim team, his underlying metrics were really, really bad, like really bad. And that's concerning, to be sure. That said, he was, I believe, like 19 when he put up those numbers, and he was on a horrific team. To me, the most exciting part about the Jamie Drysdale in Philadelphia concept is, and I don't know if I touched on this in our emergency pod, but I'll certainly break it down now. I have my issues with John Tortorella. I think he's done, generally speaking, a very good job here in terms of extracting the maximum value out of this team. I am a big, unabashed fan of Bradshaw. And Bradshaw has, just going to go through here. He has turned Rasmus Ristolainen into a legitimately solid NHL defenseman. He has taken Sean Walker, who was a salary cap cast-off, and turned him into a legitimate top four defenseman. They're getting the absolute best we've ever seen out of Travis Tampa. I am intrigued to see what Bradshaw can do with a guy who, like a 21-year-old with legitimate top pair. Like, I like Cam York a lot. Cam York doesn't have the physical ability that Jamie Drysdale has. I don't know if Jamie Drysdale is going to be a top pair defenseman. I don't know if he's going to be a number one defenseman. Maybe he'll just be a decent player. But I do know that I trust Bradshaw and the coaching staff to get as much out of him as they possibly can. And I don't know. That makes me feel good.
Hey, Charlie. So obviously we're going to have to wait from Cutter to hear what exactly happened in his opinion here. But we obviously value your opinion here. Just based off of what you've gathered from the context, what do you think exactly happened? Why did Cutter not want to come to Philly?
I mean, I don't know. If I knew, I'd report it. As I reported on Twitter, you know, I know now for a fact that the Flyers were shopping him at last draft. It seems like they definitely were prioritizing, and Briere straight up said this, that they were prioritizing a premium position and in return for him, which was either a center or a defenseman, ideally a right shooting defenseman. So I know the one thing they looked at the draft was trying to convince Montreal to trade the 5th overall pick to them. They would have taken Reinbacher, then they would have taken Mitchkov with the 7th overall pick. So they would have essentially turned Gauthier into Reinbacher. Now they've turned Gauthier into Jamie Drysdale. But if you're asking me why Cutter Gauthier didn't want to be a Flyer, I don't know. I don't know if anyone really truly knows aside from Cutter Gauthier and his family.
Real quick as well to follow that up, you've covered the Flyers during some wacky times. Where does this rank as far as the most shocking moments with the Flyers here in your time?
I don't know. I've covered this team through so many wacky moments. Like I covered this team when I was on the road in Denver and we found out Oscar Lindblom had cancer. Like, there's been so many bonkers moments with this team. This is actually something I was thinking about today. Well, not today, but literally over the last couple hours. That maybe we should have seen this coming for this reason. Cutter Gauthier was Chuck Fletcher's last draft pick, and everything Chuck Fletcher did, it always turned out like the worst case scenario seemingly would come out of it. Like, oh, I made a great trade to get Ryan Ellis. Yeah, he played 4 games. Like, oh, I've got a really good young talented winger and a second overall pick center. Yeah, like one guy's basically never going to play again, and the other guy is going to be a shell of himself after he beats cancer. Like so many things. Like, I'm not saying Chuck Fletcher was a great GM. He wasn't. But I do believe that for whatever reason, in Philadelphia, the man was cursed. And Cutter Gauthier had Chuck Fletcher's fingerprints on him. And no one's fault, but it makes perfect sense that, like, of course, Chuck Fletcher's final draft pick would not want to play in Philadelphia because everything that Chuck Fletcher was involved in, it broke wrong for the Flyers. Of course.
That's, I was just like... Yeah. Thinking about how we always joke, like, and tonight's the perfect example. The city turns towards the Flyers for salvation. Well, they just got their asses kicked by the Penguins, and one of their top prospects said, "Fuck off, I'm leaving." Like, that's Flyers hockey, baby. I want to talk a little bit more about Drysdale and just. Obviously, once he gets here, we'll be able to evaluate him better, and we'll have the next couple of days really to dive in to what his tenure's been. He's dealt with some injuries. He missed all but 8 games last year. He's only played 10 games this year. He missed training camp because, like, Pat Verbeek just wasn't signing his good young players to contracts. So, like, we'll see how this all plays out with him. But just in terms of the makeup of this roster right now, they already have 7 defensemen. Now, Mark Stahl is a regular scratch, and when he plays, it's often not even in place of Zamula anymore. It's just like, hey, we're only dressing 11 forwards, so we're going to let you get in there. How do you think this plays out, and do you think it expedites the need or desire to move on from at least one of Sealer, Walker, or, or maybe even Risto?
I mean, to me, yes. Like, to me, absolutely. One thing that was interesting is that after the game, we did talk to John Tortorella about Jamie Drysdale because he seems very excited about Drysdale. Obviously, the coaching staff was able to watch tape of Drysdale before they finalized his trade. So this is something that Tortorella and his staff were very much involved in as to, how excited they can get about what Drysdale can turn into. And he said that Travis Sanheim, despite the fact that he spent pretty much the entire year on the right side for the Flyers, that Sanheim might play the left a little bit more because he feels like everyone that's all 6 defensemen who are currently in the rotation, he thinks they're all playing well. So he doesn't necessarily, he said they might play 7 defensemen more, and they might move Sanheim over to the left to accommodate Drysdale, to keep Drysdale on the right. To me, this, and this is just an opinion. This is not anything I've heard from the Flyers. To me, the minute you get Jamie Drysdale, then the decision is clear. You're trading Sean Walker. Like, that's it. It's happening. Because now you have Drysdale, who presumably you see as a key member of your team in the future. You have Sanheim, who can play the right sides very well, as he's shown this year. You have Oliver Bonk coming. You have Rasmus Ristolainen under contract for the next few years at least. To me, this is okay, now we get whatever we can get for Sean Walker because he just doesn't fit anymore. Like, that to me, and that could be a really good thing because, yeah, they didn't get a first-round pick in this trade, but maybe they get a first-round pick in the Sean Walker trade.
I know I know the trade just happened, but did they say any word of how soon we could see Drysdale out there?
Yeah, they expect to see Drysdale at practice tomorrow in Voorhees. Tortorella said after the game, he spoke with Drysdale over the phone. He said, seems like a great kid. All the reports they've gotten about his character have been really positive. He said it was obvious on the phone call that Drysdale's head is spinning. He's a 21-year-old is what Tortorella said. Like, what do you expect? He's never been traded before. He's probably a mess right now. But he said he very much expects, based on the conversation, that Drysdale will be able to get into town by 12 noon tomorrow and be on the ice for practice. So we'll get to talk to him then.
Charlie, I saw you tweet a Danny Briere quote about the about the health of Jamie Drysdale. They said over the last couple days they've been exchanging the medical information. He's optimistic the injuries are behind him. He said he looks healthy. But did he expand on like why he believes a dude who missed basically all of last year in the first, or 30 of the first 32 games or whatever it was of this season, why he thinks this guy's going to stay healthy?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to the injury this year. I don't know what the specific injury was.
It's
honestly,
been a mystery, yeah.
And I'm not saying this to be mean to the Anaheim media, but the fact of the matter is that there just aren't that many people covering the Anaheim Ducks, and I think that I suspect it's less that it's being shrouded in secrecy and more that there just aren't enough people reporting on the Ducks to find out what his injury is. That's my suspicion. I know the injury last year was a torn labrum. It's a serious injury, but it's not a career-ending injury. It's an injury that, you get surgery for, you sit out a while, and then you come back, and you're probably okay. So to me, unless the injury this year was some type of recurrence of the injury from last year, the torn labrum, I don't really see much of a reason to be worried. It's glaring because he hasn't played that much, and he missed all of last year. But look, you never know with injuries, and it's the Flyers. I mean, they've had such bad luck with injuries that I guess you can't rule out the possibility. But look, if you're going to go into every single player that gets added to the team and assume that the worst case injury scenario is going to happen, then just stop following the team, because you don't have to be pessimistic about everything.
Charlie, I'm contractually not allowed to stop following the team. I signed a contract, so I'm gonna just assume that these dudes. Listen. I realize that it's luck, but I just saw a comment a couple of people ago that said worst luck of any sports franchise, and it's hard to argue. It's very hard to argue that, but I am holding out some optimism about Jamie Drysdale fitting in here and at least remaining relatively healthy. This is hockey. It's a contact sport. Dudes get hurt. But I just hope he doesn't step on the ice here and miss 10, because that's just going to, if you think Flyers Twitter is in a panic right now, I mean, my God, that is going to send everyone into an absolute tailspin, Charlie. I'm just trying to I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole thing. And I guess, like you said, we should have seen it coming. But in terms of, I guess the big question now, in terms of the rebuild, do you think this pushed back the timeline or messed with the timeline of the rebuild at all?
I mean, it could. Look, basically what they did is they swapped Cutter Gauthier for Jamie Drysdale. Now, you can have your opinions on who is the better prospect. Presumably, I would think most people would say Gauthier is the better prospect because he has more helium right now. He's coming off the Great World Juniors. He's a couple years younger. I get that. That said, if Jamie Drysdale, even if Cutter Gauthier is a first-line really good player for Anaheim, if Jamie Drysdale is a first-pair number one defenseman for the Flyers, all you just did was swap problems. Then suddenly it's, well, we thought we had a first-line center, but we needed a 1D. Now we have a 1D and we need a first-line center. Still a problem, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the timeline has changed. Now, obviously, if Jamie Drysdale is nearly a decent second-pair defenseman, then suddenly, then the timeline for the rebuild is, I guess, pushed back because you said you need high-end talent. Now you only have one blue chipper rather than potentially two in Mitchkov and Gauthier, and now you're saying Drysdale's just okay. But I don't think it necessarily has to push the timeline back. It just means that Jamie Drysdale has to be really good. Now, whether he's going to be really good or not, I don't know. I guess the one positive is we'll find out much quicker whether we think Jamie Drysdale is going to be really good. If he, for the next, 3-4 months of the season, just looks like shit, then maybe they are further away in terms of where they need to be on the rebuild. But if Jamie Drysdale's awesome and he can be that number one defenseman that we knew for the past year that they lacked in the pipeline, then I don't think it slows down the rebuild at all. So really, it just comes down to Drysdale.
Real quick, Charlie, I don't know how much you can comment on this, but going back to the ice, it did feel like the players were a little distracted. Any chance maybe these players were hearing about this news at all? Anything you can comment on that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We talked to Travis Sanheim after the game, and he basically said he just found out when he got off the ice
Okay.
So no, I guess you don't know for sure, but it's not like these guys have their phones in their pockets when they're going on the ice. Like
This isn't the Eagles.
They are fully locked into the game. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Flyers maybe ask the Ducks, like, let's not announce this until after the game starts so our players don't get distracted. Wouldn't be surprised if that played into it. But no, I don't think this was a case of like the Flyers played bad because they were shell shocked that Cutter Gauthier got traded. I think the only people that are shell shocked are Flyers fans.
Yeah, and while I think like players probably have their phones like at intermission, I bet you there's a big difference between like a Nick Sirianni locker room and a John Tortorella. Just having no idea about really either, but just taking an educated guess here. Bet you there's a little bit of a difference on like if Cam York pulls out his fucking phone at intermission, Cam York might not like his ice time in the second and third period.
Very true.
Like, all right, Charlie, now that we have all that taken care of, we're not actually going to do 3 stars because I have no idea what happened in this game. I don't think anyone watching has any idea what happened in this game. I'm going to try to catch up tomorrow. We can talk about this whenever the hell the next time we talk is. But thanks for joining us tonight twice. That is Charlie O'Connor,
Thanks, Charlie.
Philadelphia's #1 beat reporter, and I will talk to you Wednesday.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, and before we go any further, I have to tell you about our friends at Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills. And who doesn't need that? I can see all my subscriptions in one place. And if I see something I don't want, I can cancel with just a tap. I never have to get on the phone with customer service, which is a dream come true for me because talking on the phone, dealing with customer service. I would sometimes rather just pay a bill than deal with customer service. Rocket Money understands that, and they take care of it for me. They'll even try to get you a refund for the last couple of months of wasted money and negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is take a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/PHLY. That's rocketmoney.com/PHLY. rocketmoney.com/PHLY. All right, not a ton of time left in tonight's post game in which we did not talk about the game at all. Did I even give the final score? I think the Flyers lost 4-1. Yeah, we talked about it at the beginning, but now it's just a question of what next with this team.
Yeah.
I thought Saturday's game was a bounce back performance, and they come out tonight against a Penguins team that has been much, much better lately.
Right.
That when we saw them in December for that home and home, they sucked.
Yeah.
They were dead in the water. I think they were on like a 25-game goalless drought on the power play. They come in tonight and they scored like 15 seconds in on the power play or something. Sean Couturier got called for a trip and they scored right away on the power play. So it's just a different Penguins team right now. This was kind of a big game just in terms of you want to beat these teams that are all in this. If you're really on board with this, we got to make the playoffs thing, you got to beat these teams that are in and around where you are in the standings.
Yeah.
The Penguins obviously have the high-end guys. Sidney Crosby is having one of the best seasons ever for a dude his age, but they lack depth. They lack some different aspects of their game, but they're hot right now.
Right.
The Flyers were unable to beat them tonight. We will see how it goes. They have 3 more games this week, 3 more post games coming up for you.
That's
so
right.
we're gonna be talking to you a lot the next few nights. But I hope to see this team turn it around.
Yeah.
Because they've already banked probably too many points to be a top draft pick. If they miss the playoffs, they're going to be drafting in that,
Middle of that pack.
10+ range, which you just lost your guy you took 5th overall. You're going to want to replace him with something. Now, like I said, they do have 2 first-round picks and a bunch of other assets. They're going to trade Sean Walker, it seems, probably Nick Seal or two. You're going to get something in return for them. Maybe you're able to turn that into a third first-round pick. Maybe you're able to move up with a couple of those picks, get into that top 10, and kind of replace Gauthier in the system depth chart, in the organizational depth chart. But a lot of moving pieces right now. I really don't know what to think of this team. So it's a whole new storyline as we move into this new year.
Got a little hanky there. No, I mean, in the long term, obviously, we've got to reshape and rethink some of our pieces for the long term. But just looking at tonight, like, obviously, like, we have joked, like, they did look a little distracted here tonight. It wasn't the same type of effort you saw on Saturday against Calgary. You didn't see the same physicality either you saw against Calgary as well. It looks like the Flyers dominated in every aspect on Saturday, not something you saw here today. But one thing that they mentioned on the broadcast is very telling. This Flyers team has not allowed a lot of shots on goal. And when they're winning games, they don't allow a lot of shots on goal.
And there were like 90 shots tonight.
Yeah.
It was some like absurd total. There was still like 7 or 8 minutes left. And I heard JJ be like, oh, there's been like 80 shots. I was like, what? How? When? But like, obviously, there were other things going on that we were kind of looking into other than tonight's actual on-ice game. So we will be back with you following the game on Wednesday. We have an actual show on Thursday. Then Friday, Saturday, there will be post games as well. So lots of PHLY Flyers coming up this week. But that will do it for us. Tonight was PHLY Flyers, brought to you by Mortgage CS. And I don't know how many times I got to tell you, you got to look into Mortgage CS. It stands for Mortgage Concierge Service, and that's what they all are, a full-service mortgage company. Anything you need to know, whether you're about to buy a home, you're in the process of buying a home, you're looking at it down the line, do yourself a favor, call or text Ben right now. Save that number to your phone.
Sure, he's got some interesting comments on Gauthier.
Yeah, I'm sure. Listen, he will also talk to you about Philly sports. Tonight is a night. If you're listening on pod and don't see the number on your screen, it's 267-391-7425. That's Ben Stucker, CEO of Mortgage CS. They're a great company, really looking to build that community aspect that we love here at PHLY. Oh, yeah. And it's a perfect fit, us and them. And they're our legitimate presenting sponsor here at PHLY Flyers. So make me look good. Make me look good. And hit up our friends over at Mortgage CS. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you to Charlie O'Connor for joining us. Thank you to my guy Andrew behind the glass. For JP, my name is Bill Matz. See you Wednesday, Flyers fans.
Screw you, Gauthier.